So if you've ever struggled with maintaining habits, and let's face it, it's probably why you're on this program, you're very much not alone. But understanding the mechanics of habit formation is the first step to making lasting changes. Every habit, good or bad, has three components to it. And this is what Charles Duhigg coined the habit loop. The three components of the habit loop are the cue, the routine, and the reward. The cue is the trigger that starts the habit. So for example, the ping of the notification on your phone. The routine is the action that you take to respond to the cue. So in this example, it's pulling your phone out and checking what the notification was for. And finally, the reward is the payoff. Maybe it's the dopamine hit you get from seeing a like to your most recent post, or simply just satisfying a curiosity about what the notification was for. Without the satisfaction associated with the reward, a habit is unlikely to form strongly, if at all. But once the brain associates the cue with the reward, it locks the habit in as a reliable pattern. Now, the reason why so many so-called bad habits seem to stick so easily is because the reward part of the loop is often incredibly rewarding. Think about it. You stand at the coffee shop counter waiting on your long black coffee, and there, glistening underneath the glass in front of you, is a Portuguese custard tart. And it seems to call to you like some kind of crispy layered pastry siren call. That's the cue. The cue sets up a craving, and before you know it, you've added it to your order. And the reason's simple, because it's so damn tasty. The hyperpalatability of the salty crust and the sweet custard, the balance between the crispy base and the cool soft filling, it really does a number on us, firing off all sorts of reward centres in our brain. Compare this to deciding to nip across the road and get some carrot sticks instead, and the contrast is pretty obvious. But there's good news in this patisserie-based dilemma. We can actually harness the habit loop to aid our goals. By tweaking one of the elements in the loop, we can increase or decrease the likelihood of the habit forming. And it doesn't have to involve connecting your nipples to a battery every time you think of cake, although this does work apparently. But awareness is key. And awareness is key to all of our health endeavours. And this is something that we will be touching on throughout the programme. Once we're aware of the loop and its corresponding components, we start to see it happening to us. And eventually we start seeing it happening in real time. And this awareness allows us to respond to the cues and triggers rather than simply reacting to them. We begin to regain the power back over our baser instincts. But a single event does not make a habit. It takes multiple repetitions to form. And this is what's known as neuroplasticity, which is our brain's ability to adapt and change. And when you repeat an action, the connections between the neurons in your brain grow stronger. That's why habits become automatic over time. When you hear a notification ping on your phone, you might find that your hand reaching for the pocket before you've even been consciously aware of it happening. And there's a saying in neuroscience, the neurons that fire together wire together. And this basically means that the more you practice a habit, the easier it becomes, the more automatic it becomes. Think of it like wearing a groove in your brain. The more we work on the groove, the neural pathways, the deeper they get. And our habits are like marbles. The deeper the groove, the easier it is for the marbles to roll along the pathway. Now, this can make habits that we don't want difficult to remove because these grooves are so deep they become really ingrained. But the good news is that our brains never lose the ability to change and adapt. And during the course of this program, we'll be looking at ways of making habit building easier, how to remove bad habits, and a whole host of techniques and strategies to use when those custard tarts come a-calling. So the actionable task for today is we want you to identify 3 to 5 strong habits that you have, good or bad, and you're going to try and identify the 3 components of the habit loop for each of them. That's the cue, the trigger, the routine, the action you take after the cue, and the reward we get for fulfilling the routine. Just by starting to observe these loops, we can already begin to be aware of unwanted habits forming. And this is really where the magic happens, in the awareness. The more we are mindfully active in our endeavours, the easier it is to respond rather than react to the situation, and the more power we regain for ourselves.